Lesson 1. Settlement of the South. As you read, make generalizations about settlements in the southern colonies. Big idea. Selling crops was important to the success of the southern colonies. Vocabulary. Indentured servant. Constitution. Indigo. Debtor. Fast fact. The people who today live on Tangier Island in Chesapeake Bay are descendants of English colonists who may have settled there as early as 1686. Their language and way of life have changed very little since the first settlers arrived. They speak the way people speak in parts of western England, from which most of the island's original settlers came. Geography. St. Mary's City. Understanding places and regions. St. Mary's City, Maryland, is located near the mouth of the Potomac River. For most of the 1600s, the town served as Maryland's first capital. Then the capital was moved to Annapolis, and the town was abandoned. Later, the area was used as a tobacco plantation. In the 1970s, historians and archaeologists dug up the area on which they thought the town once stood. What they discovered was a town designed in the shape of two triangles that met at a central square. In 1606, the King of England granted the Virginia Company a charter allowing settlement of the Chesapeake Bay region. In 1607, Virginia became the first permanent English colony in North America. By the 1730s, the English had settled the remaining colonies in the South: Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. With its 13 colonies, the English claimed much of the Atlantic coast of North America, from present-day Maine to present-day Georgia. Maryland. Maryland was founded by the Calverts, a family of wealthy English landowners. The Calverts, who were Catholic, wanted to build a colony in North America that not only made money, but also provided a refuge for Catholics. Like English Quakers, Catholics in England could not worship as they wanted. George Calvert, the first Lord Baltimore, had been a member of the Virginia Company. He had purchased a large amount of land on the large island of Newfoundland, in what is now Canada. His goal had been to establish a colony there, but he found the climate too cold and the soil too rocky. In 1628, with Lady Baltimore, he traveled south to the Chesapeake Bay region. There they found a site where the climate was mild and the soil was rich. King Charles I signed the final colonial charter 2 months after George Calvert died in 1632. The king gave the grant to Cecilius Calvert, George Calvert's oldest son and the second Lord Baltimore. As proprietor, Cecilius Calvert named the new colony Maryland in honor of Queen Henrietta Maria, wife of Charles I. In 1633, Cecilius Calvert's first group of colonists left England. "I have sent a hopeful colony to Maryland," he wrote. The colonists established St. Mary's, later known as St. Mary's City, not far from the mouth of the Potomac River. Cecilius Calvert appointed his brother, Leonard Calvert, as the governor of Maryland. Leonard Calvert had learned about the unfortunate experiences of earlier English colonists, such as those who settled early Roanoke and Jamestown. As a result, he planned ahead and prevented the Maryland colonists from suffering a period of starvation. Calvert also knew that Jamestown was nearby in case the new settlement needed supplies or help. The Calverts granted some colonists large pieces of land, and these colonists used the land to start tobacco plantations. However, most of the colonists going to Maryland went as indentured servants. An indentured servant was a person who agreed to work for another person without pay for a certain length of time in exchange for passage to North America. Most indentured servants were men between the ages of 18 and 22. Many indentured servants were Europeans who wanted to move to the colonies but had little or no money to pay for their travel. The indentured servants in Maryland fared better than some who went to other colonies to live and work. When their time of service was finished, they were legally free. In addition, colonial leaders helped them start their own farms. They received 50 acres of land, a suit of clothes, an axe, 2 hoes, and 3 barrels of corn. From the beginning, Maryland's leaders welcomed settlers of many religions. In 1649, the Maryland Assembly, a group that made laws for the colony, passed the Toleration Act. It was the first law in North America to allow all Christians to worship as they pleased. Maryland became known throughout the English colonies for its religious freedom. Review. Why did the Calverts want to build a colony in North America? The Carolinas. The southern colonies of Virginia and Maryland continued to grow during the 1600s. Then, in 1663, King Charles II, the son of King Charles I, granted land for another colony located between Virginia and Spanish Florida. The charter divided the colony, known as Carolina, among 8 English nobles, known as the Lords Proprietors. Even before the charter was granted, colonists from Virginia had been building villages and were farming in the northern part of the area that became the Carolina colony. After 1663, colonists from England and the Caribbean, as well as Huguenots from France, came to settle there. The Huguenots were Protestants forced to leave their country by the French king because of their different religious beliefs. One of the first actions the Lords Proprietors took was to set up a government for the colony. They chose a Virginian, William Drummond, to be governor. Then, in 1669, the Lords Proprietors wrote a constitution, or written plan of government, for the colony. Their plan was called the Fundamental Constitution of Carolina. The plan allowed the colonists to make some laws for themselves, but it kept most of the authority in the hands of the King of England. The Carolina colonists tried raising different cash crops. The climate was good for agriculture, and the soil was fertile. At first, they planted tobacco, grapes, and cotton, but these crops did not do as well as expected. They had more success in raising cattle and trapping animals for their fur, but they still searched for a cash crop. Only when they found out the true way of raising and husking rice did Carolina begin to prosper. The colonists also produced naval stores. As the population grew, Carolina became more difficult to govern. In 1712, the northern two-thirds of the colony was divided into 2 colonies, North Carolina and South Carolina. Hilly North Carolina continued to develop as a colony of small farms. In South Carolina, however, landowners on the flat coastal plain created larger and larger plantations. The main cash crop on many of South Carolina's plantations was rice. On drier land, where rice would not grow, landowners found they could grow indigo plants. From these plants, they made indigo, which is a blue dye. The dye was widely used in the cloth-making process common in the 1700s.